When you hear the word Mongolia, what comes to mind? Probably Genghis Khan, right? The Golden Horde, these vast, endless plains. But behind that epic story is a nation of really deep, surprising paradoxes. And today, we're going to unravel them.
So let's just dive right in. Look at Mongolia. It's the 18th largest country in the entire world. I mean, it's so huge you could cram the UK inside it 6 times over. But here's the crazy part, it's almost completely empty. And then there's the even bigger mystery. How on earth did the unstoppable empire of Genghis Khan, a force that literally redrew the map of Asia and Europe, end up broken, split into the outer and inner Mongolia that we see on the map today? The first clue to solving this whole paradox isn't in some ancient history book. Nope, it's written right into the land itself, in Mongolia's uniquely brutal geography. For starters, you have to understand just how cold it gets. We're not talking about a chilly winter day. A huge part of the country experiences these polar-like conditions, with temperatures plunging to a literally unlivable -50 degrees Celsius. And on top of that bone-chilling cold, you've got this stuff, permafrost. It's exactly what it sounds like, permanently frozen ground. When the soil beneath your feet is basically a block of ice year-round, you can't farm, you can't build, you can't do much of anything. So what does all this mean? Well, it means that almost the entire population is squeezed into this tiny, habitable triangle. It's a little pocket of life, protected on 3 sides by these massive mountain ranges. And you can really see the difference here. Outside that triangle, you're totally exposed. You get blasted by Siberian winds from the north and the harsh Gobi Desert from the south. But inside, those mountains act like a giant natural wall. They create this little oasis with survivable temperatures, fertile soil, and enough rain for life to actually take root. Okay, so geography explains why the land is so empty, but that doesn't explain why the population is so small. To get that answer, we have to rewind the clock and look at the history, at the inner demons that tore an empire apart. Now, to really get how shocking their fall was, you have to remember just how dominant they were. At their peak, the Mongols were the most feared force on the planet. I mean, in just one city, Nishapur, they killed an estimated 1.7 million people. That sheer brutal power is what makes their collapse so unbelievable. The first domino fell right after Genghis Khan's death. The unity he had forged just evaporated. The empire split up among his sons and grandsons, and that kicked off centuries of bitter infighting. This weakness, this constant conflict, set the stage for one small spark to burn the whole thing down. And the spark was, incredibly, this small. Just 7 deaths. One Mongol tribe killed 7 nobles from a rival tribe. The victim's tribe was so blinded by the need for revenge that they did the unthinkable. They went to their old enemies, the Qing dynasty, and asked for help. They willingly gave up their own freedom, their sovereignty, just to get back at their rivals. And just like that, Inner Mongolia was born, under Qing control. This weakness, this willingness to sacrifice everything for a grudge, made the other Mongol tribes incredibly vulnerable. It turned them from conquerors into pawns in a much larger game played by bigger, more patient empires. The Qing dynasty, which now controlled Inner Mongolia, saw its chance to settle an old score. Remember, they had been conquered by the Mongols centuries before. Now, it was payback time. They launched a devastating war against the remaining independent Mongol tribes. The result wasn't a war. It was a catastrophe. In what's now called the Dzungar genocide, an estimated 80% of the Dzungar Mongol population was wiped off the face of the earth. Just look at this chart. It really shows you the scale of the devastation. In a single decade, the total Mongol population went from about 1 million people down to just 200,000. It was a demographic collapse so complete that they wouldn't even begin to recover for almost 300 years. I mean, how do you even begin to come back from that, from losing 4 out of every 5 people? Well, it turns out their recovery was immediately caught in the middle of a struggle between 2 huge, opposing forces that would define modern Mongolia. It was a total tug-of-war. On one side, you had Buddhism spreading like wildfire. This meant that a huge number of men, sometimes 1 in 3, became monks, which naturally slowed down population growth. But on the other side, you had the Soviet Union, which looked at Mongolia and saw a future source of cheap labor, so they did everything they could to force a baby boom. And the Soviets were aggressive, to say the least.
They used carrots, like cash awards and free homes for big families. They even gave moms all expenses paid vacations. But they also used a giant stick. They taxed people who were unmarried or didn't have kids. And to crush their main rival for population control, they used pure terror, killing thousands of Buddhist monks and destroying over 1,000 monasteries.
And all of this brings us to the final piece of the puzzle. How that split between Inner and Outer Mongolia, the one that started with that little tribal feud, became a permanent, unchangeable border on the world map. The year is 1945. World War II is ending, and Mongolia's fate is being decided, not by Mongols, but by three men in a room halfway across the world at the Yalta Conference.
You see, Stalin was playing the long game. He knew the US was desperate for the Soviet Union to help them invade and defeat Japan, so he named his price. But his price wasn't territory or money. It was getting the world to officially recognize Outer Mongolia as an independent country. Why? Because that would create a permanent buffer state between the USSR and its rival, China. And more importantly, it guaranteed a powerful unified Mongol nation could never again rise on his southern border.
So, in the end, it wasn't just one thing. It was this perfect storm of factors, all hitting at once. A geography so harsh it squeezed life into one tiny corner. An empire that ate itself from the inside out. A genocide that erased 4/5 of its people from existence. And finally, the cold, hard math of great power politics that carved the nation in two for good. Mongolia's story is just incredible. It's an absolute masterclass in resilience. But it also leaves you with this really big question. For a nation that has been shaped for centuries by brutal geography and the whims of powerful empires, can a people so long defined by their past ever truly be in control of their own future?